The camera's working. Yeah. Yeah, we live. Yeah. Should be working. Yeah. There we go. What are we going to talk about? Yeah, I think this looks promising. Okay, hi guys, and welcome to the show. Today, a slightly different video. I just thought we'd have a little bit of fun and I would share 8 watches that I would really love it if they existed. Now, I'm sure there's going to be tons of nominations from you guys, so please do share your fantasy watches that perhaps they don't exist, or they almost do. But anyway, once you see my examples, you'll get the hang of it. I'll do my wristwatch check. I'm wearing my Fortis, the official Cosmonaut chronograph. This is the earlier 38mm version. I've reviewed it, I've compared it, still absolutely loving it. I've had it for quite a while now. Yeah, it's still a lot of fun, such heritage. I mean, you couldn't really ask for more from a chronograph. And yes, I've got it on my Lucky Zulu strap. It has not come off the Lucky Zulu strap. It's a match made in heaven, I think. Another thing I would like to mention, if I just bring in my iPad here, is we have a new article written by none other than the legendary Sophie Furley of Revolution Watch. Do check it out. It's on the urbangentry.com right now. It's her personal top 10 picks from Baselworld 2018. Her selection was absolute pure class, as you'd expect. I'm really glad she included the Meistersinger Metris. Meistersinger actually released also a really cool moon phase as well, but the Metris is something very refreshing. They've got a new case, which is quite a dramatic difference for Meistersinger, but I love its balance, I love its simplicity, the colors, absolutely gorgeous. And yes, it is 38mm in size as well. I did review a Meistersinger a long time ago, so have a look back, but yeah, it's a very lovable, unique German brand, and hopefully I'll try and get my hands on one of these if I can resist the urge to buy it for myself. So yes, do check that out on the urbangentry.com. I'll leave a link. There's always a link in the description to the website. So thank you so much, Sophie, for doing that. An absolute honor. So very, very cool indeed. Anyway, let's crack on. So number 8, well, it goes without saying, and I've just reviewed it, it's the Auris Aquis. Now, yes, I know what you're thinking, hold on a moment. The Auris Aquis exists, I've just reviewed it, but what I would love to see, and I mentioned this in the review, if you haven't watched it, I got to check out the new 39.5mm. Yes, nice one, Auris. But my fantasy Auris Aquis would be exactly the same externally, right? The only difference is, well, 2 differences, but the main difference would be I'd love to see an automatic in-house version. Now, Auris last year in 2017, they came out with the caliber 113. This is a manual wind. This is actually their 4th in-house caliber. Very impressive, with an extremely cool 10-day power reserve. So it's amazing to see Auris doing in-house calibers of this level. But as you see from the watch that it's currently in, it's very much a dress watch or a complications watch, and they haven't done an automatic yet. But just for a second guys, just imagine if there was an Auris Aquis with an automatic in-house caliber. What that would mean for the brand. It would just push it up to a whole new level. It would, yeah, well, first of all, the price would undoubtedly increase. I, for one, would be willing to spend that money because you've got the design, you've got the heritage of a brand with experience in divers going back to 1965. You have the prestige, the horological might of an in-house movement that would put it on a level. It would be up there with the Seamaster, even, dare I say it, Rolex. I mean, it would just move it into a whole new playing field. Because the design for me of the Aquis is already so refreshing. Every other dive watch looks like a Submariner or a Seamaster, or nowadays, you know, you got Tudor. Oh, and that's another brand it would absolutely compete with. Tudor, it would be up there with the in-house Tudors. And I make this pledge now, right? If Oris do it, I will buy one myself. I'll be on the waiting list. I will buy one without it. Obviously, it has to be in the smaller size, but I would buy one. Absolutely. This was in my Baselworld Predictions live show, I think. Unfortunately, it didn't come to fruition, but yes, the Alpinist. I'd love to see the blue Alpinist. They've done white, they've done black, they've done green, that beautiful emerald sunburst green. And when I say they've done red, it was basically black with a little bit of red text. So yeah, you could almost do a red one. But I think blue, I love blue dialed watches. You know, I think of my Azzurro Squire 1521. I think of my Nakin. I think of my new Tudor, my Navi timer. You know, I love a good blue dial. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. It's been recently discontinued, and that kind of got me speculating about the new Aquis, sorry, about the Alpinist. Well, it's not one particular watch, it's almost 1,000 watches, and you guys, if you've been watching the channel for long enough, you know that pretty much every other watch I say, oh, if only it was a little bit smaller, if only it was a 38mm or a 40mm, you know, I say that all the time. There's about 100 watches I could nominate here. Top of the list, I'd have to say, is a 38mm Tudor Pelagos. My God, I love the Pelagos. It breaks my heart that it's too big for me. There are so many, especially about a billion, not a billion, there isn't a billion, but several dozen Breitlings at least. The aerospace, and I know the old aerospace is 40mm, but the new ones, it's one of the sexiest, no nonsense, you know. For some reason I associate the aerospace with MacGyver. It's just got that, yeah, it's because it's got that versatility, the functionality of the Ani-Digi utilitarian kind of thing going on, the tool-tastic aesthetic. I'd love to see the Sky Raven 2. Is it the Sky Raven 2 or was it the Sky Raven? I forget. I owned this watch before I had the channel. I loved it. It was 42mm. I adore that watch. The dial, it's, oh, the rubber bezel, oh my God. It broke my heart because I couldn't wear it. I just couldn't wear it, but I wanted it so much. So those are just a few off the top of my head that I wish were smaller. Exact same watches, just a little bit smaller. But guys, if you have a larger wrist, you are in for a treat over the next couple of years, because as the smaller trend continues, what's going to happen to the larger watches? They're not going to sell as much, and they're going to get cheaper. So, you know, it's been the other way around for the last few years. So for me, with the smaller watches, picking up a mid-size Seamaster has been, you know, you could pick up absolute bargains, for example, or the Omega Speedmasters, the automatics, and they're creeping up. So it's like smaller watches, the value is creeping up, and the larger watches will go like this. So it'll be a reversal. So if you are of a larger scale, the future's bright for you, certainly. Okay, number 5, it's got to be the Rolex Space Dweller. Now, I know what you're thinking. If you are a Rolex aficionado, it does actually already exist. But hold on a minute. Let me just explain what I mean, right? So this is from Bob's Watches. It's a very short article. So the Space Dweller, first of all, it's got one of the coolest names ever, right? And beyond that, it's based on my favorite Rolex, so it's the Explorer. One of the most rarest and most highly sought after Rolex watches is the Rolex Space Dweller. It was originally inspired by a 1963 visit to Japan by astronauts of the Mercury project. Project Mercury was the United States' first man-in-space program. The Mercury astronauts were a huge hit with the crowds in Japan. Rolex chose to capitalize on their popularity by introducing a special edition of the Explorer just for the Japanese market. So that even cooler now, because I mean there's a coolness just attributed to the Japanese watches in the market anyway. So the Space Dweller was released shortly after the astronauts' visit. Though it was produced on a trial basis, it was only available on the Japanese market. The Rolex Space Dweller is so rare that few people have ever seen one in person. Its rarity is due to several factors, including extremely limited production period, as it was a test product. Despite the astronaut's popularity, the Space Dweller's limited release in Japan did not spark the demand Rolex had hoped for. Thus, the watch was not put into full production. While being called an Explorer, the Space Dweller fails to bear any inscription of this Explorer name. Rather, it bears the test Space Dweller name. However, it is essentially identical to the Explorer 1016. I mean, apart from the change on the dial, there isn't any actual difference in terms of the case, bracelets, the mechanics of the watch, materials, etc. Now, as we all know, and I've discussed it many times, especially the history of the Explorer, the precursor to the Explorer is worn by Sir Edmund Hillary and co. on that famous expedition to the summit of Mount Everest. So the Explorer was a kind of logical choice by Rolex for these astronauts. And what is interesting is that this little article basically suggests that if the Rolex Explorer, Space Dweller had been a success, they would have released it commercially. And there would have been a space. I mean, how cool is that? Apparently, they sell anywhere between $30,000 to $40,000 at auction. As you would well imagine, these are extremely sought after by collectors. And Bob's Watches goes on to say, one is not paying for an Explorer. However, rather, one is paying for a rare piece of Rolex history, meant to encapsulate the spirit of the original Space Explorers. Very nicely put there. Okay, so it's a 1016, right? Just imagine if the Space Dweller had carried on, right, and it existed to this day in the current form. Just how cool it would be. And I did a quick little mock-up. I put it in red, right? A little nod to the red Submariner. Oh my God, I would buy that in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. So unfortunately, yeah, it does not exist in current, even better, my reference, 36mm. Well, if you watched my video on my latest grails, I am considering an Audemars Piguet Royal Oak. One of the watches I mentioned was the black ceramic perpetual calendar. Unfortunately, as you can well imagine, the price of these are phenomenally high. A little bit out of my budget, well, a lot out of my budget. What attracted me to the black ceramic, it's resistant to, well, it's virtually unscratchable. It's resistant to high temperature, age, and thermal shocks. Because of the AP's, or the Royal Oak's, integrated bracelet, if I was to go steel, or even more so with the precious metal, they scratch like crazy, right? So ceramic, it would keep its luster and the beautiful contrasting finishes, the high polish and the brush, for essentially, as the name suggests, perpetually, right? However, I'm happy to go with a three-hander, but the three-hander does not exist in ceramic. So I did a quick quick Photoshop monstrosity, which you'll see now. If that existed, oh my God, I'd buy it tomorrow. Well, I wouldn't buy it tomorrow because I'm too broke, but I'd buy it when I saved up, certainly. Now, I already have a moon phase, and okay, I don't have a perpetual calendar, but I have a day date moon phase in my little AP. I'm very happy with that. So less of the complication, a little bit more simple. I'd love it in 37mm. One bonus of having it without all the subdials and the extra complications is that you have more of that tapisserie dial to enjoy. Now, unfortunately, the price is going to be higher than your steel version because it takes 6 times longer to do the final finishing on just the bracelet alone. And I think ceramic makes sense because it is essentially a sports watch. I've really come to appreciate the Royal Oak because it was before the Nautilus, it was before the Overseas, it was the original haute horology super luxury sports watch. I appreciate the history and I really have grown to love and admire AP for their independence. So that is my dream AP Royal Oak, and another bonus of it being completely black, it's really compatible with your outfits. It has more of a sporty look, and the way, if you've ever seen a ceramic watch, especially one that has different finishes like this, the way it plays with light, it's very unique, very distinctive. So I cannot make this list without including, I mean, it'd be criminal not to, for me at least, the Murph watch by Hamilton. If you saw, I think it was part 2 of Watches and Movies, I talked about it. It's a really cool watch. Now, Hamilton, as we know by now, and I've said it a million times, they've starred in over 400 movies. They have a long legacy of being included in some incredible cinematic classics. One of them I consider is Christopher Nolan's Interstellar. Now, there were 2 watches, and I reviewed the one that was released. That was the khaki Pilot, I forget, but I'll put a picture and you know, I'll leave a link to the review of that. Incredible Flieger-inspired watch mixed with Hamilton's style of curvy cases, and it's a wonderful watch, wonderful, very affordable, and a definite cinematic icon. Now, there's another watch that I really liked even more in the film. They designed it only for the film. They never released it commercially, and I believe there was only one of them made. It had to be a prop. They installed electronics. I discussed this in that video. Very classic, clean pilot's watch with Arabic numerals. I love the cathedral hands, that precision of the seconds track, no date, big crown. Now, it does bear some resemblance to a watch that is commercially available. However, it has a coin edge bezel. But there was something about this simplicity. Actually, it reminds me a little bit of my World War II Omega. Simple, minimalist, but clean aesthetic and balance that is just so handsome. So it's a real shame they didn't release it, and every Baselworld that happens, I'm always, come on Hamilton, come on, you know, you can do it, and it never happened. It just, it's such a disappointment. I don't understand, because there's even been, I think Ricardo on the Facebook, he tried to get a petition against to get this watch released and send it to Hamilton, to no avail, unfortunately. But anyway, I would love to see it, obviously in a 40mm size with an automatic movement. Hell, I'd even take it in quartz, you know. It's such a gorgeous watch, I'd take it in quartz. Just to be clear, it was named the Murph watch after the character, played by Jessica Chastain, and I forget there was a young actress who played when she was a child, because obviously there's a bit of time travel involved, and etc. What was the actor's name? Hold on a moment. I've totally forgotten his name. Oh yeah, Matthew McConaughey. He wore the khaki pilot day date. There you go. So yeah, have a look back at my review. Not just one watch, but about 100. So these are quartz watches that I'd love to see in automatic, and I bet you can name about 2 or 3 at least off the top of your head. At the top of my list is the Timex Navi Harbor. I mentioned this recently. If they had released that in an automatic, I would buy it quicker than you can say kippers knickers, honestly. It's such a cool design, that 38mm size, that nostalgic vintage feel, that stonewashed case. You know, Timex need to do this because they would absolutely dominate. They take over the entry level. We saw the reintroduction of a Marlin reissue using a manual wind seagull movement. The hype for that was insane. People were flogging them on eBay for like, what was it, $600 or something ridiculous. I mean, absolute insanity. But yeah, it just shows there is a demand there. So come on, Timex. Come on, please do release an automatic. Another one I would love to see an automatic is, do you guys remember the little Age of Discovery Seiko? Incredibly beautiful 80s Seikos that were gold tone. Okay, yes, they were gold tone. I would love to see them actually in a precious metal, but imagine them in automatic. They were inspired by the marine chronometers of the 18th century, so you had little nautical design cues like the sextant on the subdial. But imagine them automatic. That would be amazing. In a precious metal, automatic, I'd buy them tomorrow. I really would. What else? What else? There are so many. I was about to say the Flighty, but there is actually an automatic version of the Flighty, and I did a video about it. What else? I'm sure you guys can nominate like a million. Last but by no means least, yes, a Sinn 104 GMT. Just imagine that. Just for a second. So I did this Photoshop, quick Photoshop I'll share for you. I took the bezel from the latest Tudor GMT because it has that kind of vintagey, I know, not a word, but for lack of a better word, vintagey feel about it. Retro feel, I guess retro is the word, right? And I think it would match the kind of classicism of the syringe hands and the dial very nicely. So instead of the countdown bezel, you'd have a bidirectional 24-hour bezel, and you'd have to match it with a GMT hand. Now, then I really had some fun with it, and I thought, well, I was looking at some vintage GMTs for no reason at all, because not that I'm ever going to buy them, but you know the ones that have been faded and the red has turned to purple? I really like that. Some people don't. I think they're gorgeous, and they've been faded naturally by the sun. So imagine a purple one, and then you'd have to change the hand, either to the fourth GMT hand, either to purple. That didn't really work, so I changed it to blue. Now you could have a whole lot of fun with this, but just for a second, imagine that. Now, it might push up the price. It would definitely, it would still be under, I think, under 2,000. And they'd use probably the ETA 2893. Oh my God, I'd buy it. I'd sell my 104 and I'd buy it. I would. I really would. Would I sell my Rolex GMT? Possibly even. I don't know. Consolidate into one watch. That would really be cool. God, and think of the money I could then play with. Oh God, well, I'd go to Japan and Germany. So anyway, guys, I'm gonna leave it there. Something a little fun, something a little different. Do nominate what watches you would love to see that don't exist, but you'd love to buy. Crazy designs, maybe an amalgamation of several watches in one. Do nominate your suggestions in the comments. I'd love to hear your feedback on this. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it and found it useful. And as always, guys, I will catch you in the next one. Okay, ciao.